Abandoned, but never defeated. How I turned things around by caring for 2 nephews. I'm Gabriela. I'm 29 years old and work as a project coordinator at an NGO. I've always been very dedicated to my studies and career, perhaps as a way to escape the constant feeling of not belonging in my own family. I grew up in a home where my existence seemed to bother me. My sister, Luana, was the star. Beautiful, popular, and adored by everyone. I was the one who got in the way, the one who had to keep quiet, the one who had to understand that life was just like that. I spent years trying to win my mother's approval, but it seemed the harder I tried, the more invisible I became. I remember Luana's birthday parties, decorations, cake, cousins running around the house. At mine, at most, a whispered happy birthday over breakfast. I slept on an old mattress in the laundry room because my room was given to Luana when she said she needed space. Over time, I realized it wasn't a phase, nor was it all in my head. It was the structure of the house. Luana on a pedestal, me in the emotional basement. And the worst part is that this made me grow up thinking I wasn't worth much, that maybe I really was hard to love. At 18, I entered college on a full scholarship. I worked in the mornings, studied at night, and moonlighted on the weekends. My mother said it was a waste of time, that I should find a decent husband. But moving forward was my way of breathing. With great sacrifice, I graduated, got a good job, and after a few years, bought my own apartment. A small place, but mine. For the first time, I felt I could build something with my own hands, without depending on anyone. Not even the affection I had always been denied. My peace was short-lived. One random Tuesday, I heard the doorbell and saw 2 children at the door, my nephews crying, each carrying a backpack. Beside them was a hastily scrawled note. "I can't do this anymore. I trust you. Luana." She had gone off with a married man, simply leaving me with 2 lives to care for. At first, I thought it was temporary, that she would return. But days passed, then weeks, and still no sign of her. Meanwhile, I tried to maintain the children's routine, calm them down, get them into school, and reorganize my life, which was already difficult, around them. When I contacted Luana, her response was cruel. She said I should register the children as my own, to make their lives easier. I refused, of course, and that's when all hell broke loose. Luana threatened me, saying she would tell my boss that I was mistreating the boys, that I was using my work to exploit minors. Complete nonsense. She even sent an anonymous letter to the NGO's HR department, trying to tarnish my reputation. Fortunately, I had a clean record, and my team trusted me. Even so, the shock shook me deeply. My mother? She was on Luana's side from the start. She said I should help the family, that she only thought of myself. She completely ignored Luana's abandonment, as if it were normal to disappear and leave her children with someone without warning. Worse, she started visiting my building, telling the doormen that I was hiding the children from their mother. It was like living a nightmare with the same characters who always made me feel small. Only now I wasn't a girl anymore, and they couldn't destroy me so easily. There was a night when I seriously considered giving up. The boys had had a crying fit. I was exhausted from work, afraid of being fired because of the slander, and my mother had left an offensive note at the front desk. I cried on the kitchen floor, silently, so as not to wake the children. I wondered if I was doing the right thing. If I shouldn't, as everyone said, give back the children and move on with my life. But something inside me screamed that I couldn't do to them what they did to me, abandon them when they needed me most. I started recording everything, messages from Luana, screenshots of the threats, statements from the school, the children's medical records. I sought out a lawyer and explained everything. She listened attentively, and for the first time, I felt someone was truly on my side. We filed a restraining order against Luana for exposure and risk to the children. It wasn't easy, nor was it quick, but knowing I wasn't fighting alone anymore, that there was a legal path to protect those little ones, rekindled a strength within me I didn't even know existed. The decision to pursue legal action sparked a renewed attack from my mother. She began calling me ungrateful, saying I wanted to steal Luana's children, that I was taking revenge on her sister out of old jealousy. These words affected me more than I'd like to admit. Even though I knew they weren't true, hearing them from my own mother, again, revived all the wounds that had never fully healed. It was as if I'd reverted to that girl who slept on the floor, trying to understand what she'd done wrong to not be loved. It was during this period that I began therapy. I always thought I could handle it alone, that I was strong for bearing everything in silence. But caring for the children, working, defending myself in court, and still dealing with this suffocating past was consuming me. In therapy, I discovered that my feelings of guilt weren't irrational. They stemmed from years of emotional abuse disguised as harsh parenting. For the first time, I began to separate what was my responsibility and what never was. This helped me breathe, to understand that protecting my nephews wasn't a burden, but a conscious choice, and one filled with love. The children gradually began to open up to me. The oldest, 7, had constant nightmares and spoke little. The youngest, 4, clung to me even to go to the bathroom. Over time, we developed a routine. Mealtimes, bedtime stories, encouraging notes stuck on the fridge. Little things I never had, but now I could give. I won't lie. It was hard. There were days I wanted to disappear, days I cried hidden in the bathroom. But every smile from them, every step forward, gave me the strength to carry on. I wasn't their mother, but I was there, present, truly. The legal process continued. Luana tried to appeal, appeared in court crying, saying she was sorry, that she wanted her children back, but the judge was firm. She demanded psychological reports, supervised visits, and real proof of change. When Luana realized it wouldn't be so easy to regain custody with crocodile tears alone, she disappeared again. This time, completely. She didn't even send messages. And yet, my mother continued to defend her. It was at that moment that I realized I needed to do something not only legal, but also emotional, to break, once and for all, this unhealthy cycle. I talked to my therapist and, after much thought, I wrote a letter to my mother. Not to get her to change because I had already given up on that hope, but so I could free myself. In the letter, I shared what I'd felt since I was little, the moments I felt ignored, humiliated, and erased. I told her how painful it was to grow up trying to please someone who never saw who I was. And I concluded by saying that I would no longer allow her or Luana to invade my life and spread pain. I sent the letter by mail and immediately blocked her number. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. Part of me still waited for her to respond, to say, "I'm sorry," to acknowledge everything. But the silence came, and it was liberating. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for validation. I was choosing my peace, choosing the 2 little ones who, even with all the chaos, had brought light into my home. Choosing to care for myself, not as a needy child, but as a woman who learned, through pain, to love herself. And that changed everything. I began to feel lighter. I slept better, laughed more easily, and could even enjoy simple moments with the little ones. A leisurely breakfast, a trip to the park, an afternoon of puzzles. They changed too. The oldest started drawing and writing short stories. The youngest learned to say, "I love you" out of the blue, with a tight hug in the middle of the hallway. It was then that I understood. Sometimes, the family we build with care is worth more than any blood bond. And that I, even unintentionally, was breaking an entire cycle. Over time, I began to reorganize my life to accommodate this new reality. I received help from a social worker who guided me on the benefits and rights of children under temporary custody. I also connected with other women who had been through similar situations, and through these conversations, I felt welcomed in a way I never had before by my own family. The feeling of no longer being alone, of being part of something bigger, was a breath of fresh air amidst the chaos. I began to realize that my story, though difficult, could inspire others to refuse to accept living in the shadows. Even with all the progress, there were still days when guilt or fear would come knocking. The fear of Luana appearing out of nowhere, of a new threat, of a new lie. But unlike before, now I knew how to act. I had legal, psychological, and, most importantly, emotional support. I had built my own safety net, something I had always been denied. I was no longer that girl who silently accepted everything. I had a voice, and more than that, I had the courage to use it. I recently finalized the custody process for both of them. It was a moment of tears, of relief, but also of pride. Because it wasn't easy. No part of it was easy. But I resisted. And in resisting, I broke a pattern that had lasted generations. I decided not to be the same. Not to repeat the silences, the omissions, the abandonments. I chose responsibility, affection, commitment. I chose finally love, that real love, that demands effort. that transforms, that embraces. And as contradictory as it may seem, that's what healed me. Today, my house is filled with loud laughter, scattered toys, drawings on the walls, and a bit of a mess on the couch. But it's also peaceful. It's respectful. It's hugs before bed and good mornings with toasted bread and warm milk. Sometimes I still think of the house where I grew up and feel a lump in my throat, but it's no longer pain. It's just the memory of where I came from. A place that forced me to be strong, but that I chose not to carry with me anymore. Little by little, I was rebuilding my self-esteem. I started going out with friends again, taking care of myself, and making plans that didn't just involve obligations. Recently, I started writing an anonymous blog to share my story, and the response was surprising. People thanked me for sharing what they'd also experienced but never been able to name. And this made me realize that transforming pain into words is also a form of liberation. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that love can't be begged for. Respect can't be begged for. And that blood isn't synonymous with family. Family is who stays, who cares, who respects your pain and walks beside you even when you're down. I thought I was alone in the world, but I discovered that when we refuse to accept less than we deserve, good people emerge, and life changes. Luana never appeared again. The last I heard from her was through a distant acquaintance. She's living in another state, with another man. And sincerely, I hope one day she changes. Not for me, for herself and the children she left behind. But today, I no longer carry that mission. My focus now is to move on, to teach the children that they are loved and to show that it is possible to build a home even when everything around you says otherwise. I'm not a heroine. I'm just a woman who got tired of swallowing injustice and decided to write a new story. A story where the invisible girl was finally seen by herself. And that, to me, is worth more than any forgiveness I never received. Because, in the end, the greatest achievement wasn't facing my family. It was choosing to love myself even when they didn't know how.